Well, hey, North Park Community Church. Pastor Luke here with another episode of First Looks. And we are continuing on in our series through the Gospel of Matthew. And I tell you what, it's been rich so far. We're going to be today beginning chapter 5. And we're going to be in the first 13 verses. Matthew 5 is the beginning of what is more famously known as the Sermon on the Mount. Whoa. Get a little crazy there. Sermon on the Mount, which is chapters 5 through 7. Okay. And as we approach this one, we'll be looking at the introduction to this sermon, which includes the Beatitudes, which is Latin for blessing. So that's kind of where it comes from there. Matthew 5 begins the first main teaching section of Matthew's gospel. There's 5 main teaching units that divides up the book. By and large, scholars are pretty well in agreement with that, just because of Matthew's clear, just literary designations and where he gives attention and So that's what we got here. This is perhaps the most famous of Jesus's sermons. We've got a lot of his famous parables and the parable of the prodigal son, parable of the Good Samaritan, things like that. But as it goes for extended discourse in sermonic form, this one is probably going to be the most famous out there. And it begins in chapter 1. Classically, this goes to either verse 10 or through verse 12, depending on how you break it up. We're going to actually be going through verse 13, actually. So I'm going to include a little bit more on this one because it's just important to remember that Jesus did not preach in verses. He preached an ongoing message here that Matthew has compiled for us. And so it can be a helpful thing to kind of grab the ongoing flow beyond the quote-unquote blessed verses that we have here. So with that, let's go ahead and start to look at what we got by way of introduction. In this first part here, we have the setting. And so let's go ahead and notice some things here. Seeing the crowds. The seeing oftentimes has the idea of compassion, to see someone. It's to notice them, to regard them. And Jesus is famous for his seeing those unworthy to be looked upon. And this was even a part of Drew's sermon last Sunday, where he talked about the humility of the king and the humility of the heart of the king. And we saw how Christ condescended not to hang around the royalty and the elites, but to draw near to the outcasts and the demon-possessed and the invalids and the sick and the lame and all of that. And so that is the crowds. The crowds is actually those who began following him in 4:23 through 25, which comprises of the ill, demon-possessed, Well, actually, I should qualify that there, because it actually says in your ESV, which we like that, it actually says the demon oppressed. So we'll go ahead and carry that. It says paralytics, those who are having seizures, and the afflicted has kind of just a general afflicted. And then also those who are from Galilee, which is Jewish. Let's see if I can get that a little smaller so we can read. Galilee, which is Jewish, and then it also says, and then through Syria. That's what it says. Syria. And the Decapolis, which would have been on the southern Galilean, southern base of the Sea of Galilee there. And that would have been very much a Gentile region. Okay, so we have Galilee, which is kind of a Jewish designation as it is predominantly. Then Syria and Decapolis, that's Gentile. And then what else does it say? It says Jerusalem and Judea, which is Jewish. And then it says those from beyond the river, beyond the Jordan, which likely connotes a Gentile population that was making their way over the Jordan, having heard about this healer. Point: Jesus is healing Jew and Gentile, reflecting the multi-ethnic kingdom of heaven. He didn't come just for the Jews. This is a big point in Matthew's gospel. He's going to focus in on the Jews. It's going to be a Jewish target for a lot of the gospel. But you're going to see this up until it makes the pivot. You're going to see just these little hints about how Jesus' mission is a worldwide mission, not just a national ethnic Jewish mission as he comes to bring his kingdom. So all of that right there is bound up in the crowds. And then it says he went up to the mountain. This is Oros in Greek. And some scholars trace 7 mountains in Matthew's gospel and see a Moses, Joshua typology at work. Now, that's some scholars. That's a little bit more of a niche point. I don't know how much emphasis I'm going to put on that, but the 7 mountains would be what all are they? There's the temple, or the mount of the temptation. There's this mountain, and then the mountain of feeding, the mountain of transfiguration. yeah, the mountain of the Mount of Olives, the Mount of Commissioning, and the Great Commission. So there's 7 of them that where Matthew specifically uses that word oros in Greek, and is doing something kind of pivotal in Jesus's ministry there. I think there is something there, but I don't know how relevant it's going to be to the message that I'm going to be preaching. So this might just be a first looks special for you there, that you can go pursue on your own time if you're interested in it. I've been reading some articles just here and there, kind of about this concept, and it's fascinating, but we'll see. All right, now following that, it says he opened his mouth and he taught them, saying. An interesting point is this blessed formula is not unique to Jesus. It appears in other Jewish writings. See Sirach, shows up in Sirach, which is in the Catholic Bible, and so you could search it and you could find it online, where that shows up. I think you're going to find it in Sirach 25, 8, and 9 is one spot. It shows up in a few different places throughout Sirach, but that's one place where you will find the blessed formula. Point: Jesus will use common rabbinic style, but will flip the content upside down. So as you read even Sirach, you'll see that the blessed life in Sirach is very different than the blessed life in the Sermon on the Mount. We'll see that even as we move on from this passage. You'll see, you have heard it said, but I tell you. You have heard it said, but I tell you. You've heard it said, but I tell you. And he's going to take just the common understanding of how things work, how the kingdom of God worked, how the Messianic kingdom would work, all of that things, all of their preconceived notions about how all of this worked. Jesus is going to flip it on his head, and in a masterful way. So with that, let's move into the blesseds. Nope. Here we go. Blessed, 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 blessed. Okay, so there we go. A lot of blessing going on here. Okay. Let me flip back to my pen. Oh, there we go. Now, the point that I want to make with this is the word blessed might not be the best translation. This word is in Greek. It is makarios, and makarios is, let me write it down here for you. Let me see if I got enough space. Makarios. That's the Greek. And then it is a translation of the Hebrew of Ashrei. Ashrei. Okay. Now, Ashrei is not the typical Hebrew word for blessing, and Makarios is not the typical Greek word for blessing. In Hebrew, it's barakah, and so this is not your typical word. There's a more formal word for blessing, as it is a blessing that comes from God, as we would maybe typically think about it. So what this is actually more is commentators have suggested these alternatives to blessed. They've gone with happy, but they don't like that because happy just has too much of like a circumstantial, emotional kind of vibe to it. They've gone with a kind of a congratulations. It's a favorable life. Favorable life. Rejoice in your favorable life. Those are some of the alternatives that are out there. So it ultimately what it's saying is you've got the good life. You've got the good life. That's Ashrei. Ashrei is you got the good life. Now, here's what we immediately think of when we see that. Poor in spirit, mourn, meek, hunger and thirst. That does not seem good. That does not seem good. The first four are actually something that would have been very readily received from these crowds. They would have seen poor in spirit, mourn, meek, and it would have pricked their ears. Poor in spirit. Spirit is really it's your inner being. It's your breath of life. It's you can be downcast in spirit, and you're depressed. You can be provoked in spirit, and you can be angry. And so you can be poor in spirit. It means that you just don't have anything left. You don't have anything left to give. You've been so beaten down. You've been just so at the bottom that you've just had so many things happen that you got nothing left. You got those who mourn, those who are weeping, those who feel the brokenness of this world. You've got the meek, those who are powerless. And I know we like to say meekness is power under control, but that's because we're Americans. Honestly, it doesn't fit the context of the crowd, and it's not even really the best word for meekness. Yes, it is a restraint of self, but it's also it's for those who have no power too, who have nothing that they can do. And then for those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, it means that you're yearning, but you just aren't getting it. This is hunger and thirst in the sense of like starvation and thirsting to death. And it's like that. You're panting after it, but you just can't seem to acquire it. And for those, guess what? The kingdom of heaven is yours. Let's go back to green. The kingdom of heaven is yours. For those who mourn, you shall be comforted. For the meek, you'll inherit the earth. For those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, you shall be satisfied. And then we get into, we move a little bit from those who are kind of in this, you've been beat up by the world kind of thing. And hunger and righteousness probably goes with the bottom ones there. But as we get into those, we see, blessed are the merciful, those who see, those who are suffering and draw near. Blessed are the pure in heart. You have an innocence in your heart, a desire for purity in your heart. You've got a desire for holiness in your heart. Blessed are the peacemakers, and blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. And this is oftentimes paired together, these ones. So some will say, this will change just the total count for some folks, depending on if you pair these two together or make them separate. But for the merciful, you'll receive mercy. For the pure in heart, you'll see God. For the peacemakers, be called sons of God. And for those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, yours is the kingdom of heaven. And so what we see here is that a couple things. We see that those that the world deems blessed are not whom God determines are blessed or having those who are primed to enjoy the good life. And this is a bit paradoxical, but take, for example, the poor in spirit. Those who are poor in spirit are those who are empty. And when you are emptied, you are most prepared to receive God. It's those who are already filled with their own wealth, their own power, their own influence, their own pride, their own arrogance, their own positional authority, all of those things. Those are the people who are not prepared to receive the kingdom of heaven because they already have their kingdoms in their hands. It's those who have been brought down to nothing who seem to be best prepared to receive the kingdom of heaven. Now, you'll also notice that we have present tense here, and we have present tense down at the bottom. And then we have future tense of how you'll be satisfied, and that's interesting because that brings about the what's called the already not yet. Kingdom is here, and kingdom is to come. And so as we live in these ways, as we find ourselves experiencing this type of life, we will, in one sense, already begin to taste of the eternal kingdom, yet simultaneously we will long for the fullness thereof to come. We will recognize that there are still some things that we await. And then it takes us down to, blessed are those who, when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil things against you on my account, rejoice and be glad in that, because your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And then right here, you're the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under your feet. You are the light of the world. This is actually next week's All right, so don't take that one yet. But here's the thing. The connection I want to make today. Lives like the Beatitudes are what brings blessing into the world. And we just see that this is not just an individual thing, like, oh, you're poor in spirit, you're mourning, you're meek, and you just kind of cloister inward. No, rather, the way in which you're being poor in spirit and you're mourning and your meekness and whatnot breeds into hungering and thirsting for righteousness and a mercifulness and a pure in heart and desire to bring peace and whatnot. The more the more that this you embody this, the world is blessed because of it. It's because this is what the citizens of the kingdom of heaven look like. They look like this. And when the citizens of the kingdom are walking around the kingdoms of this world, they will bring the kingdom of heaven here to earth. And that's a beautiful thing. Now we'll have to deal with some other things in the sermon as well about, is this a to-do list for us, or is this a done list for us, and how does it work? But I'll save that for the sermon. This is maybe just a good enough intro into the text itself to get us ready to receive it. So with all that, I really can't wait to preach this one. I think it's going to be a really a beautiful refreshment to our souls as we press into this stuff here. So I love you, church. Please be praying for me, and we will see you on Sunday. God bless.